Hello everyone, it's Verity, aka Avalon. Today we're on El Fichet, which is on my second switch. And here I've used a spare space that I had, which I don't have on my other island. So it's a great way for me to show you an example of how I plant my trees. So the different heights, the layering, what I put in between the trees, also any fencing or hedging that I use at the back. So that would usually be butting up against the cliffs. So we get to disguise the cliffs, but at the same time we get to add yet another layer. So it just creates this lovely depth, and we don't really have much in the way of gaps when we're looking from the front through to the back. And this also works for the new camera angles. I'll show you some captures at the end. This gives you a better idea of basically what we're working with all the different angles. So yeah, stick around for that, and yeah, let's get on with it. These are the 3 tree sizes we're using today. There are actually 4, but we're not going to use the smallest one. So what we have here is the hardwood, then we have our large young hardwood, and then we have our medium young hardwood. In order to keep these stunted, as you can see, I have planted another tree in between the 2 smallest ones. It's actually a fruit tree. It will never grow, but it will also prevent the other trees from growing any further than the height that we've got them at. So that's exactly what we want to do with our forest. Moving on to our cedar trees, we have the full-size cedar tree, we then have the large young cedar, and then of course the medium young cedar. So we're not going to use the 3rd size, which is the smallest. We don't really need it, I don't think. So it will work perfectly for our laying. And as with the other ones, here again I've planted a fruit tree in between, which just keeps them stunted, stops them growing any higher, and it's exactly what we want to do with our forest. This is completely optional, but you can add a bush in front of the fruit tree that we planted. It just helps to disguise it and blur and soften it. Here I'm showing you how I add my fencing as if I had a cliff directly behind me. So we only have the front to work with and the access between the trees. And if you can imagine running in front, because I run everywhere, then you can still add your fencing or your hedging and still have that nice clean line that we want to get from behind the trees. And here you can see the finished product. This is what we want to achieve, and it adds that extra texture, that 3rd layer, and it just gives us the depth we want without too much gaps in between the trees. It just makes it look really nice and lush. Now we have our mini tutorial out of the way on how I use different sized trees. We're going to lay down a path just to give us a structure. I'm using 3 wide here because if you really want to get the best out of a walkway, that's what you really need to get. And obviously you don't have to use this path, it's just as an example so that you can see the 3 width, and just you can do the exactly same thing with design. So yeah, it's just to give you a look into my process. So here what I'm doing now, I'm literally just digging holes obviously, but this gives me a really good idea about spacing, because we all know that we have to have 3 spaces one way, 3 spaces the other, so all the way around. So basically, yeah, 3 by 3, so that's 9. We need 9 squares per tree. That's not easy actually. So yeah, this is my way of doing it. Just finding that nice balance, and I want it to feel staggered at the front. We can get a bit more formal at the back because it's just layering by that point. So I'm just extending the path, give myself a really good space to work with. So yeah, if you see at the back here, it looks a lot more formal than at the front, so that we're getting more depth at the back and we're disguising that with staggering at the front. So that's my process. I keep obviously digging more holes and readjusting them because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but I won't speed through, not this bit, because I really want you to see how it's done, because often speeding through you miss out things and it saves you having to keep pausing all the time. So yeah, I'm going to leave you to it with some music until we get to the more interesting part of actually planting trees. finally plant our first tree and it completely throws off everything because I'm such a detail orientated person. I really do like a certain feel, so I want trees to be spaced, but I also want them to feel layered. So this is what this tutorial is all about, really. So you get a really inside view as to my process. If you're wondering how to go about getting all these trees, I generally keep a nursery. So I keep an area on my island where I have various different stages of tree growth. I go in obviously daily and plant in different fruit trees to keep them stunted at different levels, and then when I need them for a build, I obviously just go and dig them all up. So that's basically what I do. So you'll see that I'm actually planting the medium young ones at the front here, and I do that on both sides, because you've got to think about when you're walking through an area, you actually want to be able to see your character, which is why I went for the 3 spaces, because if you go for 2, and you think about when you actually upload your dream address, people aren't going to know your island the way you do, and you want it to be fairly easy to navigate. So this is why I layer the trees in different heights the way I do, because it allows you to be able to see your character from various different angles without too much hard work. What I now do is have a quick look, which I do an awful lot with my builds, regardless of what I'm building. So it's worth just stopping, having a look. You may actually want to move trees, so always keep fruit handy to eat and re-dig things up. But I do that an awful lot. And you will see me change some of the trees. There we go again. See, I'm just having a little look through. We're starting to get really nice layers, and I'm going to start going in with bigger trees at the back at some point. So I will replace one of the medium youngs, because it's going towards the side as we go around the corner. Don't really need that small, so we can go a bit bigger, but it just works with a different layering. So here you see me take out the one I was discussing earlier, and I replace it obviously with a bigger one, because we can get away with it here as we're going around the corner. It's all about, I do all of this so that I get both the layers and I get to see my character, or a character if you've got visitors, because it just, I don't know, just makes it really nice for shots, and it's nice to be able to see where you're going and all the rest of it, so it just makes life easier. But so I'm planting this one here, and again it completely throws me because I don't want them side by side. That's when we really realise that the holes are just guides. They're not fixed, they're not permanent. They just give us a really good outline. So that's the point of the process, is not to be rigid. You know, you might want to change a lot. So I think that's the point of this game, is just be open to edits, open to change, open to letting go. Life lessons everywhere in Animal Crossing. But yeah, I get a lot out of this personally. I really like to see it come together, and it's just, yeah, it's a lot of fun for me. This is my character just having another walk through, which I love doing because I like to see all the different angles. Oh, look at that. It's starting to look really nice actually. This is the really satisfying bit actually. This is the bit we want to get to, where we start to see that real, I mean this time of year especially, with all those colours. And there's me, you know, checking out all the different angles. So that's about as thick as we can get with the trees, get away with all the spacing. So yeah, we start filling in though, and really creating even more layer and depth. But yeah, it's very satisfying, this bit. Now we do the least glamorous part, is planting fruit trees directly behind or in between. So you don't always need to use a fruit tree behind every single tree that you stunt. You can often do it in the middle. If you've got 3 close together, it will stunt all 3. So yeah, think about the logistics of that, and you won't need to plant so many fruit trees behind, and that will give you scope and space for adding other elements that you want to add. Now we're at the stage of adding our bushes. This adds even more layering because it's also at a different height. It also helps to disguise some of the fruit trees that we planted, and it creates more texture, and as we go back, even more layering. Now we're on to fencing, in this case hedging. This creates even more texture. It also fills in the back, so even you can do this against, as I showed before, you can do this butting against the cliff. So when you're at the front, and depending on what angles you're looking at, what you'll see through the trees is then the fencing or the hedging, which takes out some of the empty gaps. It adds texture, and the great thing about hedging is that it does change colour with the season. So even in the snow, obviously you're going to get a layer of snow over the top. So there we have it. You can see it gives that lovely line of more texture, and all of these things soften and blur, so it makes everything look less harsh, and it's really nice this time of year as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of other fencing we can use to add further texture, especially if you don't want people going in certain areas, or just add interest really. So I'm using barbed wire. I will also try out country fencing, but obviously you can use any fencing you like really. It's always worth stopping every now and again and just using the camera, having a look, and seeing if there's any adjustments or edits you want to make, which I do. I want to change textures, layering. So we're really at the last stages now of this process where I start to add other elements. So we might have a big gap like here where you can't actually plant a tree, but you can add in tree items. So previously I would have used cypress or whatever was available. Obviously now we have a lot more scope. We have the pine tree, we have the evergreen. So yeah, there's a lot more potential now with the new items. And I will go back in later and start adding flowers as well. So we fill up the space, not for the sake of it, but to add interest, texture, softening, and it just creates all these lovely lush layers, which is exactly what I'm trying to achieve here. We have one more cursory look through before I actually add any of the flowers, but even at this stage you could just stop here if you really wanted to. You don't actually have to add anything more. It really depends on what you're going for, but I'm very happy even at this stage. It just looks really lovely to me. So we're finished with this build, and I've shown you pretty much everything that I usually do. Obviously you can tweak and add and do whatever you like, but this just gives you an idea of my approach. And here are some more examples that I'm going to show you with captures that I've taken of other ways you can place trees and fill in space. That's the end of the build and the end of this video. I hope it proves useful for you. I really enjoy making forests like this. If you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to click like and subscribe and hit the notification button. And until the next video, take care and bye bye.